Put down the hose. What are you doing here?
This is my house. I live here.
This house doesn't match the man. You fit a certain profile.
I'm the homeowner. I'm an attorney. Everything you just said is being recorded on your own camera.
A black man is standing in his own backyard, watering his plants on a Saturday afternoon. He's wearing flip-flops, shorts, and an old college t-shirt. He has lived in this house for 11 years. He paid for it with money he earned by putting criminals behind bars. But within the next 15 minutes, a police officer would show up with no warrant, accuse him of breaking into the property, make multiple racist comments caught on his own body cam, and demand that he get on the ground with his hands behind his back. What this officer didn't know was that the man he was about to try and arrest was one of the highest-ranking federal prosecutors in the entire state. And every single word the officer said was being recorded on the camera attached to his chest. Before we continue with this absolutely wild story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from right now. I love seeing how far this community reaches across the world. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It takes less than 1 second, and it helps bring you more stories just like this one. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Now, let's get into it. The man watering his garden that day was a 52-year-old attorney named Robert Davis. He had worked in the federal justice system for over 25 years. He started as a public defender right after law school. Then he worked his way up, step by step. He handled drug cases. He handled white-collar crime. He prosecuted gang members. He put away human traffickers. Eventually, he was appointed as a United States Attorney for the Eastern District. This is one of the most powerful legal jobs you can hold under the Attorney General. He oversaw hundreds of cases every year. He led a team of more than 60 prosecutors, and he reported directly to the Department of Justice in Washington. But on that Saturday afternoon, none of that mattered, because to the police officer who walked into his backyard, Robert Davis was just a black man who didn't look like he belonged in that neighborhood. The neighborhood where Robert lived was quiet. Most of the houses were big, with nice lawns. The people who lived there were mostly white. There were doctors, there were business owners, there were retired executives. Robert was one of only 3 black families on the entire street. He had lived there since 2013. His neighbors knew him. They came to his cookouts, their kids played together. There had never been any problems. But that Saturday, things were different. A new resident had moved in a few houses down about 6 months earlier. This new resident didn't know Robert. She had seen him a few times coming and going, but she had never spoken to him. And on that particular Saturday, she looked out her window and saw a black man in the backyard of a house she assumed was empty because she hadn't seen the owner's car in the driveway for a few days. What she didn't know was that Robert's car was in the shop. He had been using a rental. So the woman called the police. She told the dispatcher there was a suspicious man in the backyard of her neighbor's home. She said he looked like he was peeking through windows and trying doors. That was completely false. Robert was just watering his plants. He wasn't near any window. He didn't touch any door. But the call was made, and it was logged. And Officer Kevin Barnes was sent to respond. Officer Barnes had been on the force for 7 years, and his record was mixed. In the past, he had gotten multiple complaints about how he treated minorities during stops, but none of those complaints led to serious discipline. He got verbal warnings. He was told to attend a 2-day training session, and that was basically it. So when he got the call that afternoon, he drove to the address. He parked his patrol car in front of the house. He didn't turn on his lights. He didn't announce himself. He got out and walked straight to the side gate of the property. The gate was unlocked. He opened it and walked into the backyard without permission. He didn't have a warrant. He didn't even knock on the front door. And this is where the body cam footage begins. The video shows Officer Barnes stepping through the gate and moving along the side of the house. You can hear his boots crunching on the gravel. You can hear birds chirping. It looks like a normal, peaceful afternoon. Then he comes around the corner and sees Robert standing near a row of tomato plants, holding a garden hose. Robert looks up and sees a police officer in his backyard. He's confused. He didn't call the police. He has no idea why an officer is on his property. Officer Barnes immediately puts his hand on his holster. He doesn't pull the gun out, but he keeps his hand sitting right there. Then he tells Robert to put the hose down. Robert looks at the hose. He looks back at the officer, and slowly he sets the hose on the ground. Now pause and imagine this for a second. You're in your own backyard, doing something you do every weekend. And out of nowhere, a cop shows up, hand near his gun, telling you to stop. You haven't done anything wrong. You're on your own property. What would you feel? Type "unreal" in the comments if you think this situation is absolutely crazy. Officer Barnes then asks Robert what he's doing there. Robert stays calm and says he lives there. He tells him, "This is my house." Officer Barnes stares at him for a moment. The body cam catches everything. And then Officer Barnes says something that would end his career. He looks at Robert and basically says the house doesn't match the man. He says the caller describes someone suspicious, and he says Robert fits a certain profile. He doesn't say it in those exact words, but the message is loud and clear. What he meant was this: a black man couldn't possibly own a home in this neighborhood. Robert asks the officer if he has a warrant. Officer Barnes says he doesn't need one because he's responding to a call about a possible break-in. Robert tells him there is no break-in. He says again that he is the homeowner. He even offers to show his ID and tells the officer his wallet is inside the house. But Officer Barnes doesn't accept that. Instead, he tells Robert to get on the ground. Robert stands still. He doesn't move. And let me pause here to remind you of something important. Robert Davis has spent his whole career in law enforcement. He knows the law better than the officer standing right in front of him. He knows he hasn't committed any crime. He knows he is not legally required to get on the ground in his own backyard when he has done nothing wrong. But he also knows how fast situations like this can go bad. He's seen the cases. He's worked them. He's prosecuted them. So Robert stays calm. He keeps his hands visible. He speaks clearly. He tells the officer again that this is his home. And once again, he offers to go get his ID. He explains that he's an attorney. He doesn't say exactly what kind of attorney, at least not yet. But Officer Barnes doesn't care. He tells Robert that people like him always have a story. He says the neighborhood watch has had problems before. He says the caller sounded very worried, and he starts acting like Robert is the one not cooperating. Now the situation is getting worse. A neighbor across the street hears the voices. He looks out his window and sees the police car. He sees the officer in Robert's backyard, and this neighbor knows Robert very well. They've been friends for years. So he rushes outside and runs over to the fence. The neighbor yells at Officer Barnes, "Robert lives there!" He tells him he's making a mistake. He says Robert is a good man and that this is his house. Officer Barnes turns toward the neighbor, and the body cam catches the neighbor's face. He's a white man in his 60 seconds. Officer Barnes tells him to stay back, but the neighbor says it again. He tells him Robert is the homeowner. He says they've lived on the same street for over a decade. Officer Barnes hesitates for a second, but he still doesn't back down. He turns back to Robert and says he still needs to verify his identity. He tells Robert he has to come with him to the front of the house. Robert agrees. He walks slowly, keeping his hands visible. Officer Barnes follows close behind. When they get to the front of the house, Robert slowly reaches into his pocket and pulls out his keys. He holds them up so the officer can see. Then he walks to the front door, unlocks it, and opens it. He steps aside and gestures for the officer to look inside. Right by the entrance, there are several framed pictures on the wall. One shows Robert shaking hands with the governor. Another shows him at a Department of Justice event, and there's a framed copy of his appointment letter, naming him the United States Attorney. Officer Barnes looks at the photos. You can see his head turn on the body cam, and for a few seconds, he says nothing at all. Then Robert speaks. He tells the officer, "I am the United States Attorney for the Eastern District." He says he's held that position for 4 years. Then he tells him something even bigger. Every single word Officer Barnes has said was recorded on his own body cam. And Robert makes it clear he will be filing a formal complaint before the end of the day. Officer Barnes still doesn't respond. The body cam shows him standing completely still. His hand finally drops away from his holster. He takes a small step back. You can even hear his breathing change. The silence lasts almost 10 seconds. If you're still watching, type "body cam never lies" in the comments, because this footage is about to change everything. Robert then asks for the officer's name and badge number. Officer Barnes gives them. Robert asks if a supervisor is on duty. Officer Barnes says yes. Robert tells him to call the supervisor to the scene immediately. Within 20 minutes, 2 more police vehicles arrive. The shift supervisor steps out and walks up to Officer Barnes. They talk for a moment. Then the supervisor walks over to Robert, and you can see it clearly on the body cam. The supervisor's face goes pale when he realizes who he's talking to. The supervisor apologizes. He asks if Robert is okay. He says he will personally review what happened. But Robert tells him he expects more than a personal review. He tells him what happened was a violation of his rights. He says Officer Barnes entered his property without a warrant, accused him of a crime he didn't commit, made racially coded statements, and threatened to arrest him in his own backyard. The supervisor nods. Then he turns and tells Officer Barnes to get back in his car. Officer Barnes leaves without saying another word. But this was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, the body cam footage was pulled through an internal review. Robert requested it immediately after the incident, and once he watched it, he filed a formal complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division. He also sent a copy to the mayor's office and the local NAACP chapter. And the footage was damning not just because of what Officer Barnes did, but because of what he said. Every word was captured. The implication that Robert didn't belong. That line about fitting a certain profile, and that rude comment about people like him always having a story, each one of those statements made the bias obvious, and there was no way to explain it away. Because of that, the police department had to move fast. First, Officer Barnes was placed on administrative leave. Then an official investigation was opened. Investigators spoke to the neighbor who saw everything. They interviewed the woman who made the original call. They also pulled Officer Barnes's record, and they found the earlier complaints. And once people found out, the public reaction was intense. People were angry. They kept asking the same questions. How could this happen to a man who had spent his whole life working in law enforcement? How could an officer walk into someone's backyard without a warrant and treat them like a criminal just because of skin color? And the biggest question of all was this: what would have happened if Robert didn't stay calm? What would have happened if there was no witness? Those questions spread everywhere on social media. Activists pointed to the case as proof of deeper problems in policing. Legal experts started debating whether Officer Barnes could face criminal charges. Some people demanded he be fired right away. Others said he should be charged for civil rights violations. The pressure on the department was massive. Eventually, the investigation ended, and the results were released in a public report. Officer Barnes was found to have broken department policy in several ways. He entered private property without a warrant or probable cause. He failed to de-escalate the situation. He used language that violated the department's rules about discrimination. And he ignored a credible witness, someone who clearly confirmed that Robert was the homeowner. The recommended punishment was harsh. But here's where it gets complicated. Firing a police officer isn't as simple as people think. There are unions, there are contracts, there are due process rights. Even when an officer is clearly wrong, the system can make it very hard to remove them completely. And in this case, the police union pushed back hard. They argued Officer Barnes was responding to a real call. They argued he followed protocol by asking for ID. They argued that his words, while unfortunate, didn't rise to the level of something he should be fired for. The city didn't agree. But instead of dragging the case into a long legal battle, they reached a deal. Officer Barnes would not be fired, but he would be permanently removed from active duty. He would never patrol the streets again. He would never work in a role where he could interact with civilians the way he had before. Instead, he would be assigned to a desk job in a remote administrative office. And on top of that, he would be required to complete 5 years of mandatory sensitivity and bias training. 5 years. Not 5 days. Not 5 weeks. 5 years. It was one of the longest sensitivity training requirements ever given to a police officer in that state. He would have to attend regular sessions with certified trainers, and he would be required to write reflective reports. He was also required to pass regular evaluations, and if he failed to follow the rules at any point, he would be fired immediately. His career as a patrol officer was officially over. Now, some people felt this punishment wasn't enough. They wanted him completely removed. They wanted criminal charges. They wanted him to face the same consequences any regular person would face for trespassing and harassment. Others felt the punishment fit the situation. They pointed out that officers are rarely held accountable at all, and in their view, the fact that he would never patrol again and would spend years in mandatory training was a form of justice. After the decision was announced, Robert released a short public statement. He said what happened to him was not a one-time incident. He said Black people across the country experience moments like this every single day. Most of them don't have a powerful title. Most don't have a badge of their own. And most don't have body cam footage to prove what really happened. He said the system needs to change not just for people like him, but for everyone who deserves to feel safe in their own home. Robert did not call for Officer Barnes to be sent to jail. He didn't demand anything more than what was given, but his message was clear. This incident was a symptom of a much bigger problem. Now let me ask you something. Do you think 5 years of sensitivity training is enough? Or should Officer Barnes have been fired completely? Type training or fired in the comments. I really want to know what you think. As for the woman who made the original call, she was never charged with anything. She said she truly believed something suspicious was going on. She claimed she was just being a concerned neighbor, but critics argued she only called because she saw a Black man in a neighborhood where she didn't expect to see one. This case became a landmark example in conversations about racial profiling, body cam footage, and the need for police reform. It was used in training materials. It was mentioned in legislative debates. It became a symbol of what happens when bias goes unchecked. And it all started because a man was watering his tomato plants. Robert continues to serve as a United States attorney. He still does his job with the same dedication, but in interviews, he has said the experience changed him. It reminded him that no matter how far you rise, certain assumptions can still follow you. Now, he uses his platform to speak about reform. He works with law enforcement agencies. He pushes for better training. He does everything he can to make sure what happened to him doesn't happen to others. Officer Barnes completed his first year of sensitivity training quietly. There were no public statements, no interviews, no apologies. Just a silent exit from active policing. For the next 4 years, he will sit in a small office, going through training sessions and paperwork, learning lessons he should have known from the start. Justice doesn't always look like handcuffs or prison cells. Sometimes it looks like a badge being taken away. Sometimes it looks like a career ending, not with a bang, but with a long, slow grind of training sessions and reports. But one thing never changed. The body cam never lied. It captured every word, every action, every moment of bias that could have been denied without proof. And because of that footage, a man who was treated like a criminal in his own backyard was able to prove the truth. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with this story. If you found it powerful, please share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. There are more stories like this waiting for you. Stories that need to be told. Stories that need to be heard. Until next time.